Today we're towing with the most powerful 1500 engine I have towed with so far on my towing loop, none other than the 3.4 liter i-ForceMAX in this very nice looking Toyota Tundra. So buckle up because things could get spicy. Welcome back, I'm Alex, and while we are on the towing testing grounds today with this honestly beautiful looking Tundra TRD Pro, kind of has this desert storm sort of color to it, but I'm very excited, and hopefully you guys are too, to be towing with not only the most powerful 1500 engine that I've towed with so far, but the first hybrid engine on my towing loop. And I am expecting very big things out of this engine and potentially could take the crown from that 3.5 liter EcoBoost. Under the hood of this Tundra, we have a lot going on. So we have a dual overhead cam, direct injection, twin turbocharged V6 engine paired with an electric motor, which is slapped in between the back of the engine and our 10-speed ACE transmission, giving this power plant 437 horsepower, 583 pound-feet of torque, almost 600 pound-feet of twist. And this is the most heavily undersquared engine that you can currently get in a pickup truck in 2025. Toyota told Cummins to hit the road in that department. Also, we have offset cylinders, which is going to add to that torque load. So this engine is a bit of a torque monster, delivering all 583 pound-feet at only 2,400 RPM. So I'm expecting big things out of this engine, and hopefully all that torque generation can equate to a very good towing experience. We may touch on those power figures in just a little bit, but with us today we have the TRD Pro Tundra. There are some potential towing downsides because this is a rather off-road trim, and we will 100% get into that. But as I mentioned, the current towing champ on my towing loop is the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, and that engine came with a twin turbocharged V6, 10-speed transmission, and 331 gears. This truck comes with a twin turbocharged V6, a 10-speed transmission, and 331 axle ratio. So yes, it's not apples to apples, but I think it should lead to a very, very nice comparison when towing my trailer. Speaking of my trailer, here it is. It's an 8,000 pound enclosed trailer that we tow with every 1500 engine. We also tow the exact same 120 mile loop through the Appalachian Mountains to ideally give us a very nice comparison between engine and engine. And we actually finally have our tongue weight dialed in this time, between 800 and 900 pounds, exactly where you want to be. And thankfully to our waist-safe hitch here, we know exactly what our tongue weight is and just keeps things really simple. If you guys want a hitch like that, you can use my link down below and get 10% off at waistsafe.com. First up, we have our off-the-line acceleration truck. We put the truck in four-wheel drive and go 0 to 50, and it's a great test to see how well this truck's torque can be transferred to the wheels to get our load moving. And specifically with this truck, I am very excited to see how we can put all that torque down and potentially beat off that 3.5 EcoBoost. All right, we're in four-wheel drive tow haul mode. 3, 2, 1, to the floor. $50. Interesting. It felt like it shifted very early there. Take two. 3, 2, 1, to the floor. Yeah, it did shift early. Well, that's not gonna work. Well, the i-ForceMAX was actually quicker than I thought, even though we shifted at like 4,000 RPM. I think if it revved all the way out, like this EcoBoost did, all the way to like 6,000 RPM in first gear, we probably would have had a better time if I had to guess. And this is exactly where that electric motor comes into play, helping this truck accelerate. Now, we weren't done there because I wanted to see this i-ForceMAX rev all the way out, and that's exactly what we did. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and manually run this thing all the way out to rev line and get to 50 kilometers an hour, just to try and give it a little bit more fairness. Here we go, four-wheel drive. 3, 2, 1, to the floor. Well, it didn't like that very much either. What's a little wild is this thing didn't automatically upshift. It let us bounce off that red line for a little bit. Sorry, Tundra. Despite that acceleration test maybe not being favorable towards the Tundra, generally in terms of acceleration with this i-ForceMAX engine, I cannot complain. It is really, really, really good. The throttle response is fantastic. Something you don't always feel with a turbo or turbocharged engine on my towing loop with this trailer, but it is phenomenal. The truck just has power. It just pulls, and you can just sort of drive the truck normally in town. You're not revving all the way out to like 4,000 RPM to get up to, I don't know, 30, 35 miles an hour. It's just easy. It pulls this trailer with complete ease. So I actually did have to go in town. I had to get an SD card, but so far this i-ForceMAX is towing extremely well at slower speeds. I am starting to believe this actually might be a fantastic towing engine down the highway. It's just, there's just so much power down low, and we really don't need to go above like 3,000 RPM to get this trailer moving. Boom, 50 kilometers an hour. Seamless towing experience. And that is sort of what you expect with almost 600 pound-feet of torque. And this is time for our second acceleration test. We go 60 kilometers to 110 kilometers an hour, roughly 70 miles an hour as we jump onto the highway here. 60 to the floor. Ah, there she goes. She revs out now. 110. She's quick, but not quick enough. And you might be saying, how could this be with this i-ForceMAX having more horsepower as well as almost 100 more pound-feet of torque than this 3.5 EcoBoost? But from my understanding with this i-ForceMAX, the electric motor doesn't really add much power at higher speeds, especially highway speeds. So accelerating at these speeds here, getting up to almost, well, 70 miles an hour, we're probably not having much help from the electric motor. And well, the standard 3.5 non-hybrid gas engine in these trucks is actually less powerful than the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, which could explain these time differences here. So like we always do, we got our truck set at 110 kilometers an hour in cruise control, and we're just gonna let the truck do its thing in tow haul mode, of course. So far, this thing is impressive. There you go. Downshift to like 1900 RPM. With this wind resistance and 8,000 pounds behind us, that is pretty freaking impressive. So the two big things I like to look out for on our towing loop is RPM control as well as fuel economy. And well, with this being a hybrid engine, I am extremely curious about fuel economy to see if, you know, when we are at these highway speeds going over these hills, if that hybrid powertrain is actually going to save us some fuel when we're towing a heavy load. I honestly don't know, so I'm excited to get the results on that. Typically what we see with these turbocharged engines is horrendous fuel economy. The 3.5 liter EcoBoost, yes, is the towing champ currently, but it finished with like just over 5 miles per gallon. Disgusting. It drank so much fuel. I'm really hoping that this hybrid setup can maybe not do that, but we'll see. We'll see. The second thing I like to look out for is our RPM control, and I feel like this engine will be really good at keeping our RPMs nice and low. It is where our torque band is. 2400 RPM is where we make our peak torque, so the engine's going to want to probably try and stick around that as best as it can. Also, I'm just curious to see if this electric motor can also help keep these RPMs lower. All right, here's our first hill here, and we are currently revving at 2800 RPM, maintaining speed perfectly. Again, this engine's pretty seamless, and you might be saying, well, it's kind of unfair because this engine clearly has much more power, but the electric motor in this engine only has a 1.7 kilowatt hour battery pack, so it's not always going to be delivering power to this driveline. In fact, from what I've read, when we're cruising down the highway, we should most likely be fully using the gasoline engine, and that's sort of it, especially on these long pulls, where the electric motor is most likely going to be jumping in on acceleration, gear shifts, and short hills or short bursts of power. Not like this, so we should be mostly just relying on the gas engine, and with it being a heavily undersquared engine, offset cylinders, it's just going to be pumping out a ton of torque, and that's exactly what we're seeing. The max towing capacity on these Toyota Tundra trucks is 12,000 pounds. Now this specific truck behind us is just a little bit over 11,000 pounds, and for a crew cab 4x4 truck, that's very respectable. Even more respectable for a off-road trim truck like the TRD Pro. You might be saying it's a little bit unfair to compare this off-road TRD Pro to a stock standard F-150, and you're not totally wrong. First, this truck gets a 1-inch suspension lift, which is going to add more drag and could potentially put more stress, more wear on the engine when towing and decrease some fuel economy. Secondly, and probably most importantly, is our tires. We get some Falcon Wild Peak all-terrain tires with some more aggressive tread. It's also a little bit wider than your standard Tundra tire, probably a little bit heavier, although it is still the actual same height, 32.5 inches, that you get on a standard Tundra. So thirdly, we get some nice off-road Fox suspension on this truck, which is probably going to lead to this truck having some softer suspension for that off-road capability. And as we're seeing, this truck is sitting a little bit lower than, let's say, a standard F-150. So yes, we do have a couple things on this TRD Pro trim that could hurt our towing experience today, but overall, I think it should be pretty minimal for the towing or testing that I do on the highway. A really nice luxury with this engine so far is that a lot of the time we're actually sitting in top gear and just cruising at like 1900 RPM, and having tow with a ton of engines with this trailer, we don't normally always see this. So it's just the ease of towing with this engine so far has been really nice. You can just kind of cruise and the truck just works when it needs to, but when you're not going uphill like right now, it can just settle right back down, rely on all that torque generation, and you don't really need to have high RPMs. One thing that is not so nice to see is our fuel economy. 36.8 liters per 100 kilometers. Not really great out of a hybrid engine. So hopefully that improves. I don't think it will. Even on like slight hills, this engine's only revving at like 2400 RPM. It's impressive. All the way up that little ridge. You know, this thing is calm, cool, and collected while towing this load. It just makes it really easy. And yeah, what can I say? Toyota has so far on this run, it seems like has built a very, very capable towing engine that I honestly had my doubts about. I've certainly been critical of this engine, and I mean, maybe rightfully so. It certainly has not been perfect since its debut in 2022, and potentially isn't going to be as reliable or as durable as the previous Tundras with the 5.7 liter V8s. But one thing that I cannot argue with is that this thing is putting out a ton of power and it tows very well. All right, here comes our second hill here. Downshift, 2400 RPM. Might get jammed up by this truck here. Downshift again, 2800 RPM. Yeah, we are. So we're gonna move over here. Yeah, can't complain with that. I'm genuinely really liking this truck when it comes to towing so far. Obviously the engine is performing exceptionally well, but it's a comfortable ride. Even the mirrors, now these aren't the actual tow mirrors you can get with these Tundras, although I do think they look kind of silly. But you know, with an 8-foot wide trailer, I got plenty of visibility. I'm enjoying this Tundra, dare I say, fellas. Well, we made it to the halfway point and we're sitting at the gas pump because, well, we used quite a lot of fuel. Now, granted, the tank was not full when we started, but 37.0 liters per 100 kilometers, not great. Looks like the hybrid powertrain still loves the fuel. So we'll top off the tank here because I don't really want to run out of fuel, not today. Anyways, oh yes, there is a fuel button there. Well, despite this hybrid engine still costing me quite a bit of money to run this trailer down here, I'll still pay that $100 every day of the week than having to sit at those chargers for 2 hours. A little bit of flex on those tires, not a big deal. I had to refuel too, a little cafe. It is a sharp looking truck, fellas. There's no doubt about it. You got the red accents too. It does look really good. So far, I'm actually very impressed with this i-ForceMAX and this Tundra. I thought I was gonna be a little bit disappointed, if I'm gonna be honest. I was aware that the electric motor would probably not give much aid on the highway, and that's why I figured that this thing might not be as powerful as the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, but turns out that's not the case. This thing is performing extremely well, and in my opinion, I think it tows better than that 3.5 EcoBoost, which I thought I would never end up saying. You know, she might not be as fast as the EcoBoost, but when it comes to pulling power, torque generation, this thing is phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about how well it's been pulling this trailer. Now, as you guys know, on our backstretch, that's where we have the biggest hills on our towing course, so I am quite excited to see how this engine handles those bigger hills. Let's get this trailer back in the wind and see if we can continue this this impressive run so far. Here's our fourth hill here. Downshift, 2,400 RPM. Another downshift right away, 2,800 RPM. It seems to be where this engine likes to sit. It's time for the biggest hill on my towing loop. Here we go for all the marbles. Downshift, here we go. 2,800 RPM. Very impressive. Very impressive. Wow. The i-ForceMAX, fellas, it is not a joking matter. This thing can tow. Wonderful towing engine. If you guys are looking to buy a great towing engine and you need to tow a heavy fifth wheel camper, whatever, that's, you know, 8 to 10,000, 11,000 pounds, you're not gonna be disappointed with this engine in terms of its power and performance. Not gonna lie to you guys, I sort of thought this i-ForceMAX hybrid pushing almost 600 pound-feet of torque was gonna be a little bit bullshit, and turns out it really isn't. Now, that could be just because the 3.4 liter i-Force V6 is designed so heavily to just put a lot of torque out, and that could be why it's such a great towing engine. And the electric motor may not actually have done much for us on this run. It's tough to tell, but either way, it has certainly swayed my mind a little bit on this hybrid i-ForceMAX, because yeah, it's a great towing engine. Well, as we're just getting off the highway here, we finished with 33.3 liters per 100 kilometers for our fuel economy. That is the most efficient turbocharged engine we have ever towed with in the 1500 segment on my towing loop. So not only was this engine extremely powerful, it was also somewhat efficient for a turbocharged engine on my towing loop. Well, this isn't a Toyota Tundra. Obviously, I had to give that truck back, sadly. But I wanted to wait just a little bit before I made a conclusion on my towing loop with that truck. In fact, I'm actually editing the video right now. And it is, in my opinion, the new towing champ on our towing loop. It was a fantastic towing engine. And yes, it was packing a ton of power, but I sort of knew that electric motor probably wouldn't help us that much on the highway. And despite it potentially not helping us at all, that Tundra was a very powerful towing engine, and I liked it a lot. I still think that EcoBoost is a very powerful towing engine, but like my own Power Wagon, we had an off-road trim truck, the TRD Pro, and potentially if we had a normal Tundra with the i-ForceMAX, we could have had an even better towing performance with potentially less aggressive tires. But I think what was most impressive, and actually didn't show that much on camera, was the i-ForceMAX when towing at slower speeds, towing in town, because the electric motor was much more active at those slower speeds, and it made towing this trailer an absolute breeze in town. The throttle response was, no pun intended, electric, and it's just something that I haven't previously experienced with gas turbocharged engines. Typically, there is some turbo lag when there's a load on them. With this i-ForceMAX, it was non-existent. Bottom line, if you're looking for one of the best towing 1500 engines in the segment, and you're not overly concerned about the complexity of the i-ForceMAX platform, do not overlook the Tundras, because they do pack a punch. And even the non-hybrid i-Force I would assume probably tows extremely well, with the design of that engine just focused so heavily on torque generation. So that's my opinion. If you guys did like the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. Obviously, if you own one of these Tundras and you've towed with them, please let me know what you think, because as I always say, I do like to hear what you guys have to say, and I do learn a lot from your comments. Lastly, if you like stuff like this, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, because we'd love to have you on board. Anyways, enough of me. We'll see you in the next freaking video.